In this episode of our series on intentional community, I'm interviewing Pat Landsel, who, along with her husband Ron and several other couples, started an intentional community down in Long Island, New York, back in the 1970s. So Pat, do you mind describing for me sort of when you first encountered the concept of intentional community? Was that a completely new thought to you?
Yes, it was a completely new thought. I was living a very normal, young married mother life. I was raised Catholic, so I had some spiritual roots, and in the late 70s there was what they called the charismatic movement. There was a charismatic for the Catholics, Pentecostal for the Protestants, and Jews for Christ for the Jewish people even. It just all happened at once. It wasn't like somebody planned it. For me to say honestly about this movement, it was the movement of the Holy Spirit. And through the movements and conferences and prayer groups across the country, I grew up on Long Island, so it was on Long Island, the concept of community came up. When I heard it myself, I felt like, honestly, something in my heart like, yes, of course. You know, this makes sense with the gospel. And my husband and I, talked about it, and friends from our prayer groups, and some people didn't think that was necessary. Some people thought, this is maybe what we should do. Let's pursue it. This is the call. We're trying to follow Jesus now, or let's find out more. So we started discussing it, going to conferences, as I said. That's where I first heard the concept of community, knowing nothing about what that was going to mean, of course.
Do you mind describing for me the community that you were part of? What did that look like practically?
First, we started out praying in house groups on the weekends. We would meet and bring all the children, and this was a new idea, bring all the children and pray together and so on. And then from a group that I found on Long Island that were also interested in community, and it wasn't near me either. I had to travel out on the island to find them. I had just heard about them. And this group was intentionally trying to find out what did this mean, this call to community, and do we all live in one house, and so on, and so on. So we did eventually do that through a lot of prayer and a lot of agony and a lot of people, of course, being upset with each other. There was 4 of us that left and moved up to a house up in Schoharie County, farther up in the mountains than I am now. Very beautiful farm that we rented, seeing how it would go, because if we went forward in this, we would all have to leave our jobs. Our security of we had little children, so our security of having our health coverage, that's a big thing, of course, and jobs. Because we lived in a household, we met together all the time. There would be certain times that we would give just to the children. There would be certain times for the adults to pray together, and very soon it came up about the leadership, and that's where a lot of people didn't even think about that we would have to decide which person was going to be the leader and guide us, or who was because there wasn't anybody that gave us that pastoral feeling. We were more sort of just jumping in together and trying to follow a call. It was very, very joyful, and we were in love with what had happened to our lives because we gave our lives to Christ.
What were the most rewarding parts about living in intentional community with other people?
The children. I guess the children would be first. It's not as as rewarding, I would say, as a bigger community like I've joined now. It was also new, and fortunately we had a beautiful place where the children could be, run out and be with the wildlife, and we had enough children because we were all small families. Any happiness was when we were all together, and we even had people from wider neighborhood that came to join us. So we were pretty sure this was a God thing, When we were all together with all the children and all the young parents, we were all young. It was very, very wonderful and joyful and uplifting, and we felt we were doing what we were supposed to do in our hearts, for sure.
What were some of the more challenging aspects for you?
The challenges were personality, of course. And you don't know that, at least I naively, I don't think my husband did either, that you're not going to just all be happy, it's going to be all different. And we all had different ideas, even though we had prayed together on Long Island for so long. We didn't know it until we were under the same roof. It was a big house, and we all had a different part, like apartments, very similar to what we have.
So obviously, at some point, your intentional community ended, and then what happened after that?
It was almost a year we stayed together, and then it didn't. But, if I can say, in the meantime, we had visited the Bruderhof because we were so close. I thought it was wonderful. Of course, it was all set up, and there was lots of families. And so when this didn't work out, I'll just speak for my family, we decided let's stop at the Bruderhof because it's on the way back to Long Island. And if we go back to Long Island, maybe we'll never do this again. Because a lot happened up there. And so we came here to visit. And we never left. Because we were all we had let go of everything anyway. But we were also taken by what we experienced. Within a month, that was our family. And then slowly the other families would hear what I would write them letters because we didn't have computers or anything. I had to write them letters and say, this is what's happening. Oh my gosh, this is what we were thinking about, And they all started coming up one at a time. The 4 couples that did join the community from that group are still with us today, and the other couples just lost the hope. And it wasn't Catholic. We were all Catholics. It wasn't Catholic, so they didn't, go for it under that reason. So,
do you have any thoughts about intentional communities that are not started on a religious basis? Like there's a lot of eco-villages, co-housing situations where the purpose or the goal is not at all religious.
Well, I know from our time there was many groups very similar, and some of them lasted a long time, many years. But eventually, then it might have been 20 years, and maybe that's without the God Center. Maybe that was as far as they could go. I don't like to judge even that type of person that's trying to do something good in our world. I think God is with them even if they're not saying the word God, you know what I mean? When your intention is good, then it's going to take you somewhere or to a certain level, as far as it can go, I guess, for each heart. I don't know. I'm not one that gets turned off by labels, and you can see the fruits of the community. That's a big word that Jesus uses, the fruits, and you can decide from that. I would like to visit those communities myself. And maybe they don't say God. Maybe there's more there than we that say God. You know what I mean? I don't know.
So there's been renewed interest recently in intentional communities, and some statistics say that about 90% of intentional communities fail. So do you have any advice for young people who might be interested in the concept of intentional community or are looking to start one themselves or join one that they know of? Do you have any advice for those young people?
I would say go with your heart. You know, I think community is definitely not something that's easy to live out, but it's not meant to be. And I wouldn't say that to a young person particularly, but if you're really committed to Christ and you're trying to follow Him in your own heart, you know, the Holy Spirit speaks to all of us, and I think you'll be led. You know, you'll be led to something that works, and that's what I think. If you're really, really sincere, and don't let the first barrier or the first crisis, you know, say, "Oh, this doesn't work," you know, forget it. So, yeah, I think it's a journey that God calls us to, definitely. And if they feel called to it, or is it just something they think is a great idea in this world because it's a difficult world to live in, to live with Christians, would be a marvelous idea. Yes, it would be, and it would be something that would insulate their lives, but there's also more to it. And that beginning of Christ, learning how to listen to Him in your heart, the Holy Spirit in your heart, I think will lead them, but has to be sincere, you know, or maybe that's my feeling now at 72, definitely.
So thank you very much, Pat. I enjoyed talking with you today, and I hope you all enjoyed listening in on our conversation. And so if you're interested in seeing more videos from us and following up on more of the videos in this series, please like this video and subscribe and ring the bell for updates every time we upload.